I am 54 years old, and for the better part of my existence, I believed I had life reasonably understood. I married at 22, devoted myself to raising 2 children, maintained an orderly household, and remained firmly within the boundaries society had drawn for me. Love, in my experience, had always been something steady and measured, never volatile or unpredictable. I used to believe those profound, transformative moments existed only in literature or cinema, not in actual life. Certainly not in mine. But last week, something occurred that completely dismantled that assumption. And it began while I stood in my kitchen on an ordinary Thursday morning, still in my nightclothes, barefoot on the cool tile floor, with the remnants of yesterday's makeup smudged beneath my eyes. I never imagined something like this could happen to me. Please, do not make the same mistake I did. It was an overcast Thursday morning, one of those heavy gray ones where the entire house feels wrapped in thickness, where the atmosphere itself seems weighted. The kind of morning where rain drums steadily against the window panes and makes you want to retreat beneath warm blankets and forget the outside world exists. Entirely. I was wearing faded cotton pajama pants and an oversized sweatshirt from my daughter's college days, the fabric worn soft from years of washing. I had not planned on seeing anyone that day. The house was silent. I had just poured my second cup of tea and was midway through folding clean linens when I heard an unexpected knock at the front door. Initially, I assumed it might be a package delivery. I peered through the peephole and there he stood. My son, Jonathan. Now, you need to understand something about Jonathan. He is 32 years old, lives on the other side of the city with his partner, and rarely appears without advance notice. He has always been the considerate type, the sort of person who sends a text message before making a phone call. Seeing him there, standing beneath my porch overhang with his hair dampened by the rain, holding nothing except his phone in one hand and wearing a troubled expression, it startled me deeply. I opened the door immediately. "Jonathan, what is happening? Are you all right?" I asked, concern flooding my voice. "Yes, I am fine. I needed to see you. Do you have time to talk?" He replied, his voice slightly strained. "Of course. Please come inside. You are completely soaked." He stepped across the threshold, brushing moisture from his jacket. I noticed immediately how tense he appeared, his shoulders rigid, his jaw clenched as though he were struggling to contain something powerful within himself. He did not even remove his shoes, which was distinctly unusual for him. I closed the door behind him and gestured toward the living room sofa. "I was just folding towels," I said, attempting to lighten the atmosphere. "Please ignore the disarray." He offered a half smile and sat down, but I could see clearly he had not come for casual conversation. I brought him his preferred mug filled with fresh tea, still in my nightclothes, hair uncombed, my slippers making soft sounds against the wooden floor. I sat in the chair across from him and waited. The rain continued its steady percussion against the windows, filling the silence stretching between us. He finally looked up, and his eyes were different. Softer, but turbulent. "Mother," he began carefully, "I had a serious disagreement with Elena." "Oh," I said, genuinely surprised. "Is everything all right between you two?" "No," he exhaled heavily. "Not really, I left. I am not certain I am returning." The word struck me with unexpected force. Jonathan and Elena had been together for nearly 7 years. She was essentially part of our family by now. He rubbed his hands together nervously, fidgeting. I leaned forward gently. "What happened?" He hesitated, searching for words. "It is complicated. We have been circling the same arguments repeatedly. I needed space. I needed someone who truly understands me." Something in the way he spoke that final sentence made me pause. There was a vulnerability in his expression I had not witnessed before, almost like a child silently asking permission to show weakness. He had always been composed, always proper, but in that moment he was simply my son, exposed and seeking comfort. I reached out instinctively and placed my hand over his. "You are always welcome here, Jonathan, regardless of circumstances." He did not speak immediately. He simply looked at my hand resting on his, then up at my face, and something imperceptible shifted in the atmosphere between us. That quiet, invisible transformation when two people suddenly realize they are not who they were 5 minutes earlier. I could feel the warmth emanating from his palm, how firmly he held my hand. His breathing gradually slowed. I felt my own heartbeat accelerate slightly. It was the sort of moment you cannot plan or anticipate. You simply experience it, like an invisible thread drawing two hearts closer without either person consciously understanding why. He did not release my hand immediately, and I did not withdraw mine right away. The silence expanded, not uncomfortable, merely charged, like the stillness preceding a summer thunderstorm. And that moment, that precise instant, changed everything. I wish I could claim I withdrew first, that I laughed away the tension, stood up, and told him he was welcome to stay in the guest bedroom as I always had. But I did not do those things. I simply sat there holding his hand, experiencing emotions I had not permitted myself to feel in many years. There was a flicker of something in Jonathan's eyes. Hesitation, perhaps even guilt, but also something deeper, like recognition of a shared understanding. I slowly pulled my hand back, attempting to ground myself in reality. I apologize, I whispered, barely audible. For what? He asked softly. For allowing things to become unclear. He looked at me carefully, as though reading the subtext beneath my words, the way he used to study my face as a young child when he was nervous about revealing the truth. I am not unclear. Mother, he said gently. That word, mother. It anchored me again, returned me to my proper role. I stood quickly, smoothing my sweatshirt, suddenly hyper-conscious of how disheveled I appeared. I turned toward the laundry basket, but my hands trembled slightly. I think perhaps you simply need rest, I said. I will prepare the guest room bed. But he remained seated, watching me, still holding his tea mug in both hands, as though it were the only thing keeping him tethered to reality. Do you ever feel as though you are merely living the life other people expected of you? He asked. The question stopped me completely. Yes, I answered without turning around. I felt the room shift again, quietly. His voice was softer when he continued. Elena said, I am too much like you. That made me turn around. Like me? She said I suppress things, that I am excessively cautious, too measured, that I do not allow myself to want what I genuinely want. I stepped back toward the sofa. Is she correct? He looked up at me then, his eyes clear but exhausted. I honestly do not know. I sat down again. There was space between us this time, but not much. Perhaps just a cushion's width. I leaned back, watching the rain streak down the glass like tiny rivers seeking their path. You always were the thoughtful one, I said. Even as a child, you used to arrange your toy trains in perfect sequences and become distressed when one was misplaced. He smiled faintly. I still do that, actually. With tools now, in my workshop. We both laughed softly, and it felt warm, even though the air between us remained thick with unspoken thoughts. I was similar, I continued. I always followed the established rules. I was terrified of disappointing anyone. Your father and I, we made it function for a considerable time, but not because we were passionately in love. It was about stability, predictability, safety. I never questioned whether I was truly happy. I just maintained everything, kept all the pieces in their proper places. Jonathan's expression softened. I never realized you felt that way. I never showed it, I replied. That was the problem. I became so proficient at appearing content that I forgot what genuine contentment actually felt like. He nodded slowly, absorbing my words. That is exactly how I feel with Elena, as though I am performing a role. As though I am the version of myself she needs me to be, but not who I actually am. Then perhaps you need to discover who you actually are, I said gently. Not who you believe you should be. He looked at me for a long moment, something unspoken passing between us, a shared recognition of parallel struggles. Can I ask you something? He said finally. Of course. When you divorced father, did you feel relieved? Or terrified? I considered the question carefully. Both, simultaneously. It felt like standing at the edge of an enormous void. I knew remaining in the marriage meant continuing to disappear, but leaving meant confronting complete uncertainty. And at my age, uncertainty felt more frightening than invisibility. But you left anyway. I did, because staying would have eventually destroyed whatever remained of who I actually was. Jonathan's eyes glistened slightly. I do not want to disappear either. Then do not let yourself, I said firmly. Even if that means making difficult choices. Even if that means disappointing people. Even if that means not having all the answers immediately. He reached across the space between us and took my hand again, this time with deliberate intention. Not romantically, not inappropriately, but with genuine connection. "Thank you," he said simply. We sat that way for an extended moment, two people who shared history and DNA, but also shared something deeper now, an understanding of what it means to feel lost within your own life. Eventually, I stood and moved toward the kitchen. "You must be hungry. Let me prepare something." He followed me, and we worked together in comfortable silence, me making soup while he sliced bread. The rain continued its steady rhythm outside, creating a cocoon of intimacy within the small kitchen space. We ate at the small table near the window, steam rising from our bowls, the only sounds our spoons against porcelain and the persistent rain. The silence was rich, comfortable in its stillness. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, his voice quiet. "I thought I would feel more certain after leaving Elena, but I do not. I simply feel untethered." I nodded, understanding more profoundly than he realized. It is difficult to walk away from something that appeared correct on paper. Even more difficult when you do not know what comes next. He looked at me, truly looked. "That is how you felt with father, is it not?" My breath caught slightly. "Yes," I admitted. I knew it was finished years before I departed. But the idea of dismantling everything we had constructed terrified me. So I remained until remaining began to feel like slowly vanishing. He swallowed hard, his eyes becoming glassy. "You were never invisible to me." The words landed with unexpected impact, like a gentle but profound blow. "I always thought you were stronger than anyone else I knew," he added. "But perhaps I never stopped to consider how much that strength cost you." I looked down, blinking away the sting forming in my eyes. "It did cost me, Jonathan, more than I acknowledged at the time. And now I do not even recognize who I am when I am not holding everything together for everyone else." He reached across the table, his fingers gently brushing mine again, not with urgency, but with quiet care. "Perhaps it is acceptable not to have everything resolved," he said softly. "Perhaps simply being here together is sufficient for now." I did not respond verbally. I simply allowed his hand to rest over mine. I permitted myself to feel the warmth, the comfort, the connection that arrived without demands or expectations. "I miss feeling close to people," I admitted, my voice threatening to break. "Genuine closeness. Not the performance you maintain at social gatherings or display in family photographs. The kind where you are truly seen." Jonathan's gaze remained steady. "You are seen right now, and in that moment I felt it. That unspoken bridge between us, constructed from years of shared history, silent strengths, and quiet wounds. He was no longer a child. He was an adult with his own pain, his own confusion, and somehow our separate loneliness had converged in the same space. We remained like that for a considerable time, two souls weathered by different storms but sharing the same shelter. Eventually, I rose from my chair and said softly, "Come with me." He hesitated briefly, then followed. We did not speak as we walked down the hallway. I opened the door to my bedroom, the bedside lamp casting a warm amber glow across the room. I pulled back the covers and slipped beneath them, facing the wall. A moment later, I felt the bed shift as he lay down behind me, fully clothed, maintaining respectful distance. He did not touch me in any way that crossed inappropriate boundaries. He simply lay there, his breathing gradually synchronizing with mine. It was unconventional, certainly, but it did not feel wrong. There was no shame in the warmth, no guilt in the comfort. Just two people who did not want to feel isolated tonight, and as I closed my eyes, I realized something profound. Sometimes connection appears in the least expected ways. Not always romantic, not always tidy, but always genuine. That night, I did not dream. I simply breathed, and that was enough. The morning sun filtered through the curtains gradually, soft and golden. I opened my eyes and took a moment to remember where I was and who lay beside me. Jonathan was already awake, lying on his back, staring at the ceiling, his hands folded on his chest as though in deep contemplation. The room was quiet except for occasional birdsong outside and the distant sound of someone mowing their lawn down the street. I turned on my side and observed him for a moment. He appeared peaceful, but there was a heaviness in his expression I recognized all too well, the kind that settles in after a long emotional night. "Good morning," I whispered. He turned his head slightly and smiled. "Morning." We remained like that for several seconds, the air between us gentle, almost sacred in its stillness. Then he sat up slowly, rubbing his neck. "I should probably go," he said, his voice low. I nodded, propping myself up with a pillow. "You do not need to rush." "I know," he said. "But I think I need to face things. Elena, the apartment, everything." He stood and moved to the edge of the bed, his back to me. The weight of everything we had shared, the vulnerability, the comfort, the confusion, hung in the air like morning mist. "I want to thank you," he said without turning around, "for last night, for simply being there." "You did not make it easy," I teased gently. He chuckled, finally turning to face me. "I never do." I rose and wrapped my robe tighter around myself. I crossed the room and placed a hand on his arm. "Whatever happens next," I said, "remember that it is acceptable to be uncertain. Life does not arrive with an instruction manual. We figure it out one messy step at a time," he nodded. "I think I have been terrified of making mistakes, of choosing incorrectly." "We all are," I said. "But sometimes the wrong choice teaches you more than remaining motionless ever could." His eyes searched mine again, and for a moment I saw that same flicker, the storm, the tenderness, but it was softer now, as though he had discovered a fragment of clarity. He embraced me then, holding me tightly, not as a child needing his mother, not as someone seeking escape, but as someone simply grateful to be understood. I held him in return, my chin resting lightly on his shoulder, breathing him in the way I used to when he was small, and the world still felt manageable. When he pulled away, there was something steadier in his expression. "I will call you later." "Please do," I said with a genuine smile. He gathered his jacket and moved toward the door. I stood in the hallway watching him leave, the morning light catching in his hair, making him look, just for an instant, like the little boy I used to chase through the backyard. And then he was gone. I sat on the sofa afterward, cradling my tea in both hands, staring at the rain-streaked windows. The house felt quieter again still, but not hollow. Last night had awakened something within me, a recognition of how fundamentally human we all are, how much we carry silently, and how rare it is to share that weight with someone without fear of judgment. There were no simple labels for what had occurred, no neat categories to contain our emotions. It was not about boundaries crossed or rules violated. It was about feeling seen, feeling safe, feeling authentic, and perhaps that was the essential lesson. We are all simply people. Messy, longing, learning. Even at 54, I'm still discovering what connection truly looks like. Sometimes it is complicated. Sometimes it is quiet. And sometimes it arrives in night clothes on a rainy morning with someone who needed you exactly as much as you needed them. I stood, walked to the window, and opened it slightly. The fresh air touched my face, cool and clean. For the first time in a considerable while, I did not feel as though I were holding everything together through sheer will. I simply felt open, present, alive, and perhaps that is sufficient. Perhaps that is everything.